Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. My name is Jason Tierney from Transform Dental Sleep, and we are here with updates that you should look out for at next week's American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine meeting in my favorite city in the U.S., New Orleans. So before we get started, I want to share a couple of quick housekeeping matters. You can and you should type down in the bottom any questions that you have as we go. We're going to try to get to all of them before we wrap today. Secondly, if you're on until the end, and today's webinar is an hour and 15 minutes long, remain on until the end, and you will receive your CE certificate via email within the next 48 hours. So you'll have it by Thursday evening. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't see it from us by Thursday evening, check your spam, and it's likely in there. But I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. There's a bunch of other things you could be doing on a Tuesday night, and the fact that you are here is a testament to your commitment to the profession of dental sleep medicine. So thank you. And now I want to say thank you to and introduce our esteemed panelists. First, we have Len Liptick, who is he might be the smartest guy in dental sleep medicine. He is the CEO of ProSomnus and someone with a long storied history in dentistry and in medicine. And Len, why don't you share a little bit more about who you are, where you've been, and how you got here?
Well, first of all, Elias, is this being recorded? Because I'll just share that little snippet with my wife and kids who think I'm the dumbest person in the world. So I'd love to show them that clip of Len Liptak, CEO, one of the founders of ProSomnus, and excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the program, Jason and Elias. Anything I can do to help move the industry forward, I'm all in on. So thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate you, Len. And then my good friend, Mr. Randy Curran, who is the founder and CEO of Pristine Medical Billing. If you've been doing dental sleep medicine or offering dental sleep medicine services in your practice for any period of time, I'm certain you've heard the name Pristine. Most of the biggest names in the field use Randy's services, so we're honored to have him here, and I'm thrilled to call him a friend. He is the guy that, if I have any questions about medical insurance for oral appliance therapy, he's the guy that I'm calling. So I'm fortunate that he usually picks up the phone. Randy, you're also a big Philadelphia Phillies fan, is that right?
Yeah, right. Actually, I do like the Phillies. I like Harper, but yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it as usual. And like Lynn, I'm doing everything I can and spending my time to help move the industry forward. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share whatever I can share to help others on the call. And go Pirates.
Go Pirates.
Go Pirates.
And then we've got my friend, Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh, I'm just going to speak very candidly here. Talking with dentists over the last 20 years about oral appliance therapy, so often I hear from dentists about their frustrations with their medical colleagues and their lack of willingness to embrace oral appliance therapy. Dr. Singh, you are not that guy. You are an ambassador for oral appliance therapy. And you are a licensed sleep physician in, I believe, all 50 states. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and why you're going to kick knowledge today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here and a part of this esteemed panel, which I can't compare to. But what I will say is that for sure, like I've been doing this now for the last 17, 18 years. And I'm glad to be here because, one of my frustrations has been with generally in our industry in terms of like really trying to get patients to benefit from, whatever treatment works, right? And we sometimes get so tunnel vision into a certain type of treatment, where we've been uh, told that this is the gold standard. And I'm not saying that those treatments don't work, but it's really great to be able to be working with dental colleagues and to think outside the box and, get patients to the point where they need to get, right. So my goal has always been about, hey, listen, I want to get you to feel vital, right? Vitality is actually, in my opinion, a human birthright, right? So what are we going to do to make you get there, right? So it's a pleasure to be able to like enhance, pass on that knowledge and experience and work with folks that really want to help their patients to get to that point.
Well, we're
Appreciate it.
jazzed to have you. Thanks for being here to share your knowledge and experience with all of us tonight. Just one more reminder before we jump into the questions. For those of you that maybe got here a little bit late, you can type your questions as we go down here in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to all of them. Also, the questions that we'll be covering today, you sort of using to kick off our discussion. These are questions submitted by registrants, attendees just like yourselves. So keep the questions coming, and we'll try to keep it on topic for what matters to you and the information that you want to know. And lastly, we're going to end at quarter after today, quarter after the hour. So it's 75-minute webinar. Stay on until the end. You will get your CE certificate emailed to you in the next 48 hours. Check your spam folder if you don't have it then. With that said, let's dive right in.
Jason,
Yes,
can I dive in? I'm going to build off something Dr. Singh said in his intro.
please.
You mentioned the term gold standard, and Dr. Eddie Saul, who I have the privilege of work with, back in 2015, he wanted to write an article in Sleep Review about how CPAP was the gold-plated standard. And they shot him down pretty hard. They said, no, we're not, that's a little too provocative. But I think it's right on. And I think that's what I'm excited about with this AADSM is that I think that we're seeing that CPAP is no longer the gold standard. I think that that's being challenged. I think that polysomnography as a gold standard is also being challenged with data showing that single night polysomnography can have up to a 25% error rate. And then AHI is no longer the gold standard. We're shifting towards oxygen-based metrics. So I think that there are three key pillars that have been considered the gold standard of our field for decades that are now kind of being questioned through science and clinical practice. And I think the AADSM has some science and some lectures that will elucidate some of the challenges to these gold standards. And it's going to be interesting to watch it unfold in front of our eyes.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. Specifically with CPAP as the gold standard. For many years now, amongst my dental sleep colleagues, they were constantly, there's this sort of chorus that you should never speak in anything that could be perceived as disparagement about CPAP. Right. And, some of the things that you just said, I mean, they're certainly not disparaging, and they're based on data, but still many will hear that and say, uh-oh, you're persona non grata potentially. Yeah. How do you counter that? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, and that's how even Eddie Saul, a physician, not a dentist, proposed an article to Sleep Review, and it was considered heresy. And he was shut down for that. I admire his courage for even giving it a shot in the first place. But I think the way is that there have been now a number of very credible, well-respected medical studies questioning not the adherence of CPAP, but the efficacy of CPAP. The SAVE trial showed no benefit to cardiovascular health. Now we have the study that shows that CPAP may actually be harmful to heart health, that the air pressure expands the lungs and can create problems with endothelial function and other things that are germane to healthy heart. And then there was, I think, a relatively definitive study by Pepin out of France where they studied 500,000 CPAP users 50% of them terminated within 3 years, not just non-adherence to a less than 4 hours a night, but flat out terminated
Done.
within 3 years.
Mhm.
And I think that the data, I think those studies are being done by people who are very well respected. And so there's a certain definitiveness to those findings. And I think now it's physicians who are beginning to realize and then you throw on top of that, not to mention recalls, right? Serious adverse events from CPAP. Even the cleaning machine for a CPAP got a recall. And I think physicians are becoming more and more open to this idea that they need to have more tools in their toolbox than just a CPAP. And so they are increasingly open to non-CPAP therapies for patients with OSA. And it represents a tremendous opportunity for all of us, but we got to approach it in the right way.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
take the bait and pass it over to Dr. Singh. Approaching it the right way, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Len. Like we're getting more and more data in terms of understanding, especially like the non-adherence, but even more like data. Like there was a study that was done in sleep in 21. I think it was by Cons that showed that, like even with patients that have severe sleep apnea, and he looked at just using oral appliance therapies because they refuse CPAP, we saw like the reduction in AHI was more than 50%. Okay. So what I would say to that is that, as a clinician, right, when people come to you, you're trying to look at the clinical picture, right? And so if you have got someone that has significant sleep apnea that's interrupting their quality of sleep, their quality of life, increasing their risk for having comorbidities, there's no reason not to like start with oral appliance therapy in those cases. Even if the pairs kick back, right, you can always document they have issues with using CPAP if they've ever tried it, if they have claustrophobia, if they don't want to use it. So I always say, like, let's work with our patients and understand what are they preferring, right? That's always been my sort of MO. What are you preferring? And then let me work with you to get you better, right? Maybe I've got to add combination therapy at some point. I don't know. I might have to, right? So the point is that work with your patients as a clinician, right? And that's where we've got to change our mindset. Now, what I will say is that still my colleagues, I still believe, even though there is a shift, I agree with you. I agree with Len, there's a shift, but there's still this really strong mentality that we've CPAP, right? With sleep doctors, okay? So you might run into that, right? And and in that case, what I would say is just work with your colleagues in terms of, sometimes the patient's got to get on CPAP and fail it for them to make that switch, right? Unfortunately, we got to work that direction, but I do believe that over time, we're seeing a shift in terms of data, in terms of also what's going to come out there as, as our first and second line treatments, right? So that's happening. Yes.
That's a great a great segue. Some of these changes into this question that was submitted. Basically, when is there going to be an oral appliance with patient monitoring capabilities that's a legitimate, product, a useful product, because that's going to help dentists as they broach this topic of oral appliance therapy with physicians, with their medical colleagues. So, Len, I know this is something ProSomnus has been working on, and I mean, what does this look like? Because I also know that there's some other manufacturers that have been working on this over the years too. So what's the status, and what's the status of this being a real deal, marketable, scalable product, and how can dentists then leverage that to bridge that gap that Dr. Singh was talking about?
Yeah, I think I've been wearing one for the last several months, and it's fantastic. And as I was explaining kind of in the prep, that it's kind of changed my morning routine because my wife says, "Hey, how did you sleep last night?" And instead of saying, "Oh, I slept great," or "the dog was on my head," or whatever it was, I pull out the app and say, "Well, honey, I slept 6.5 hours. My blood, my pulse rate was 84 and my SpO2 was 93%. Do you want to know anything else?" So it's a very different discussion in the morning. So I think that we're very close to having a viable product with patient monitoring capabilities. And I think, we're gonna shift into that type of a world fairly quickly. My guess is the speed of the shift will likely be dictated by market access and reimbursement and billing, and how quickly payers cover it as a viable therapy, because I think that'll govern the transformation. But if payers are there and willing to pay, and there are remote patient monitoring codes on the books, so if those payers are willing to pay for the therapy, I think the transition will be relatively rapid, because it's a significantly different experience, and it addresses some of the barriers that sleep physicians routinely cite, which is they lose track of their patients, or when the patient comes back for a 6-month follow-up, they really don't have any objective data to talk to the patient about their treatment plan or their titration plan. They just say, "Hey, how did it go? How's it doing? Oh, my device turned brown." Well, get a new one. It's very anecdotal, and physicians generally don't like that. They want to be able to look at a printout of the data. Okay, so you are compliant. You're sleeping on average 6.5 hours per night. I notice you're not sleeping very well on Sundays. Is there a reason for that? Yeah, I go out Saturday night and I get drunk. Like, at least they can now have a more informed conversation about their sleep health. So I think for a lot of reasons, we're going to move quickly into the world of oral devices with patient monitoring capabilities, providing that the payment and reimbursement mechanisms are there to support it. I think that goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway.
And how is this product, is your product different from some of the others that have gone to market over the last, 12 years?
Well, the most common devices with patient monitoring capabilities over the last 12 years have largely been those with an embedded thermosensor, which measures the intraoral temperature as a surrogate for compliance.
Mm-hmm.
May report how long the patient wore the device. It may provide some additional data about position, but it doesn't track the patient's oxygen or pulse rate. The significance there being that we're trying to key in on the physiologic metrics that are predictive of health outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
The Harvard group did a series of studies demonstrating that sleep apnea-specific hypoxic burden, which requires an SpO2 monitoring capability, is predictive of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular events. And they also showed that sleep apnea-specific pulse rate is predictive of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular events in men. So we're trying to key in on sensors that provide data that's of critical medical value, as opposed to just sensors that collect whatever data they can happen to get because it's technologically easy to do.
Sure.
Getting oxygen data is very difficult to do, and the R&D team have done a tremendous job of trying to figure out how to make that work. Given that everyone's arch form is different, everyone's buccal mucosa is different. So that's why this mass market part of your question here, I think, still is the part of the statement that I think we're farthest away from, because I think that a dental provider absolutely will need to be involved with making sure that the mandible is positioned correctly, that we get good records of the patient's anatomy, so that we can build the sensor devices correctly and get the jaw in the correct position, and that a dental provider can understand how to read the oxygen data to make informed decisions about titrations.
Okay, yeah, and you touched on this with your allusion to payers a couple of times, but I think one of the issues, the primary issues with, well, I should say one of the primary issues, one of the big issues with past monitors was not just the limited data that it captured, the limited channels that it measured, but also, sure, the dentist wants to know, the physician wants to know if the patient is wearing the device and how effective the device is. But if it falls on the dentist to buy a reader and pay for a chip and pay for it to be embedded in a device, there's the what's in it for me. So it really seems that there's got to be some sort of reimbursement, and that's something that ProSomnus is working toward. Is that?
Absolutely. We've put together a coding schedule, and hopefully in New Orleans or shortly thereafter, I can sit down with Randy and get his input on it. But there are a schedule of codes for remote patient monitoring, remote physiologic monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring, oxygen monitoring, chronic care management, that all could be potentially applicable here, depending on the payer's policy. And then we also did get the K1037 code added to the schedule, which is a charging station / docking station for oral devices with sensors. So we hope that new code at some point will get covered and begin to pay for the charging station portion of the system.
So it's moving in the right direction, though. That's very encouraging.
Yeah, and other companies like the Monetaires of the world are billing the remote patient monitoring codes, and if Teresa was on here, she could tell you, but I think it's something like 80 to 85% of the time they are getting paid. And when they don't get paid, it's really a documentation issue, that the proper documentation wasn't submitted, because you have to show 16 out of 30 days a month worth of data transmission. You have to show at least 20 minutes spent reading the report or interpreting the data, and that all has to be documented and submitted with the claims. And if it's not done correctly, it'll get rejected. But I think that's the stuff that we all need to work out and work through and think through about in terms of creating market access for this new product.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's roll over to Randy. Randy, I think we just set a record for the longest time you've ever gone without saying something. So I'm glad we got this recorded, because now it'll live on forever. But there's this question about the future of telemedicine for DSM, especially for Medicare patients. The question that actually came through was, telemedicine had become pretty ubiquitous during COVID, and I think they were asking about some concerns that would be less so going forward. Do you have any insights into what the future looks like here? Can you look in your crystal ball?
Yeah, before I do that, I do want to, I've been holding this back the whole time, patiently, as you acknowledged there. I do want to compliment Dr. Singh. Aman, your beard is on point tonight. I don't know what you're doing there, but it's looking good.
A new gel, man, a new gel, just a new gel.
But yeah, back to the topic. It's good, obviously, through 2024 as the CCA, the Congressional Appropriations Act, that granted the extension on that last year and extended it all the way through the end of this year. Obviously, we don't know. I mean, that's going to be up again in probably here in about 6 months. I think they approved that 6 months prior. I think it was 2022 that they approved it all the way through 2024. So hopefully we know if they're going to either extend it or just permanently allow that. I know the LCD, the limited coverage determination for the oral appliance, does state in person. They changed that from face-to-face to actually be in person right around 2020, 2021. I think it rolled out 2021, which kind of gave us a scare until the Appropriations Act extended it till 2025. I think it'd be hard to go back on what everybody's used to now, the norm of society and access to care for Medicare patients now. And I think they've proven that they can do this with ease, and be able to have a lot more access to care. And I think Medicare, when you look at all of this, when you look at remote patient monitoring, you look at wearables and you look at telehealth, Medicare is why did they approve the coding for remote patient monitoring? Why are they subjecting themselves to a lot of fraud that, has already started to go on with remote patient monitoring? Medicare is trying to reduce hospital visits, right? Patients returning to hospital, patients going into a hospital, ER visits. So they're doing, when you're on Medicare, you're 65, unless replacement plan, you make a mistake and purchase a replacement plan, you're on Medicare until you pass away. Unlike United Healthcare, Cigna, Anthem, where you can change your insurance policy and carrier almost every year, depending on your employer, depending on the plans that they've chosen. Medicare, I think, is more invested. And to me, long story short here, I think that they're going to continue it with everything else I see Medicare doing to keep patients out of the hospital.
Mhm. I heard a stat a couple weeks ago. I think Dr. Sharkandi deserves credit for this, and maybe things are more expensive in Canada, but he was saying that it cost about $700 to turn over a hospital room or to turn over a waiting room for any type of clinical visit, with the disinfecting and changing out the PPE and just the downtime while it's being changed over. So if you think about that,
Very
that
costly.
itself is a huge incentive to keep people out of the hospitals.
And they got to pay that Chick-fil-A person who stands in line getting everybody in Canada to the clinic.
That's right. There you go. But I wonder what it is, and for dent, I'm sure there's some people online who know what it costs to turn over a dental operatory in the United States, but it's another way of thinking about, appointments for titrations or appointments for devices that maybe go awry. How does that add up to, let's say, the total cost of serving the patient?
Great points. I think this is something that the three of you will be able to speak to. But what impact will consumer wearables, think Whoops and Apple Watches, et cetera, what impact will they have on the future of sleep patient management? And how can this question, the second part of this, was asked by many registrants in different ways, but really what they were saying is, how can I, as a clinician, tell my patient that your Apple Watch isn't enough? It's saying that you slept fine last night, like you still need to have a follow-up sleep test, et cetera. So can we first maybe talk a little bit about what the shortcomings are, and then how a clinician might be able to address that? And then third, what developments in consumer wearables are coming, and how they might affect the marketplace. Dr. Singh, you're probably closest to this. You want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Before I go there, let me just say two things in terms of the previous conversation. So one is in terms of like billing for chronic care management and remote monitoring. We've been doing that for years now, and we've been getting reimbursed, right? So that's not going to change. And the codes are actually getting more extensive in terms of what you can bill, right? So I think that's just a no-brainer going forward. That's what's going to be on the plate, because that's, again, getting to Brandy's point, like you're going to have reduced hospital costs, right? Keeping people out of the ER, keeping people out of the medical floors, that sort of thing, the ICUs. That's what we're going to want to. That's what they're going to see, and we're seeing it, right? So I think that's just a no-brainer going forward. And telemedicine, I think I agree with Randy. I think ultimately they're going to wind up, because we've been getting reimbursed throughout the country for telemedicine now for years, right? And knock on wood, I believe that's going to be, it's a standard of care now, right? So I hope that's what they realize in terms of actually reducing costs, right, going forward. In terms of wearables, what I'll say is this, right? So wearables are still far away from being a home sleep test. And one of the things you got to tell your patients is that, yes, we can get an idea in terms of, like in times you're waking up, times you're sleeping, maybe we're getting some idea in terms of stages of sleep, but they're not as accurate, right? Because then we're not measuring EEG, we're not measuring the parameters that we do with a home sleep test. So what I would say to your patients is like, listen, this is kind of a screener Like maybe your home sleep test is saying that you're not getting a good quality sleep, and that's great, right? So you've come to me now, and now we have an opportunity actually to measure your sleep in a much more objective manner and to get a better idea of what's happening to your sleep. And now the cost of a home sleep test is ridiculously cheap. Okay.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't we do that? Right.
Mhm.
So let's go to the next step of actually measuring your sleep and getting a real home sleep test. So that's the way you've got to frame it to your patients. That's what I've been doing now for the last few years, because you're right, wearables are are the thing, right? Whether it's your Apple Watch, it's your Aura Ring, and now they're getting better, even in terms of like oxygen saturation, right? We're seeing it, right? So, and if you got a patient that comes in saying like, "Hey, listen, my O2 sats are dropping the 80s. I see it in my Aura Ring, right? I paid for that." That's like, great. Okay, good. We can't make a diagnosis. Let's do a quick test and let's get an idea of what's going on. Do you have sleep apnea? What can we do to treat that, right? So that's where I would say we are with wearables. What the other thing I'll say is that definitely the next 5 years we're going to see expansion in technology, and there's definitely going to devices that are coming to market that are actually going to go much further than that, and being able to diagnose, being a diagnostic test as a wearable. Okay,
You think
it's
in
just
the
a
next
matter of
5 years, you said?
Absolutely, yes.
I'll tell you in the next year.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
I
make
didn't want
that
to say next year. Randy stole that from me, but yeah. Okay. I said just to be cautious, but yes, I would say the
Any
next
day.
year. Yes. Right.
Okay. Um, anything you want to add there, Len?
Well, I agree with Dr. Singh's comments that, and even with the device, even though we're going for a full FDA clearance and indication for use for oximetry, um, that we still will advise healthcare providers to use it as a surveillance and monitoring tool. And if they see something that is of concern, that they should get the patient back in and order a proper diagnostic test to investigate what they see. And they order the test and can bill for the test and bill for the appointment, and and give the patient great care.
Mhm.
Most of the physicians that we talk to, they want all the data. Wear 15 watches, wear 10 rings,
Yeah.
wear an intraoral device with a
You're
sensor.
looking like a sleep Mr. T.
Exactly. They want all they'll take it all and try to put it all to use somehow. But I think where the rubber meets the road on the shortcomings are that I believe the AASM scoring manual, Dr. Singh or Randy, jump in if I get this wrong, but it requires at least 4 hours of data a night to be able to properly characterize a patient's sleep.
Mhm.
And the current wearables technologies don't even come close to giving you 4 hours. There was a really interesting interview with the CEO of Massimo with the Apple Massimo patent infringement, where he basically was chuckling, saying the Apple Watch only takes like 10 samples a night. It's not even close to giving you an hour's worth of data, let alone 4 hours worth of data to meet the AASM standards for being able to characterize sleep. So, and of course, the trade-off there is that if the Apple Watch is taking samples all night, it's burning down the battery, right? Like there's a
Sure.
battery storage sample rate
Yeah.
trade-off. And the
Yeah.
Apple Watch is burning its battery doing a bunch of other things in the background, updating apps and whatever it's doing. So I think that that's where the rubber meets the road, is that a lot of the non-FDA cleared wearables just simply don't capture enough data per night to be considered medically credible. That'll change, of course. Things will get better, and we are on a very, very steep technology curve
Mhm.
in this area. But that's how I would characterize a shortcoming. It doesn't get enough data per night to characterize sleep. And a lot of these kind of non-FDA cleared oximeters are really good from like 100% SpO2 to 90% SpO2 because it doesn't matter. But if you ask them about their accuracy in the 80% SpO2 or 70% SpO2, which is when you really need it to be accurate, they're
Sure.
pretty terrible. They don't track against FDA cleared oximeters. So that's what I would say are the shortcomings, is the amount of data that these consumer wearables can get per night, and the ability for the data to track against an FDA cleared oximeter during desaturations.
Yep.
I'd like to add one thing there, one real quick,
Please.
right? Real quick thing.
Please.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Len, because I'm not on NDA right now, so I can say this, right? So we did actually a comparison with the Aura Ring and trying to compare it to PSG. So we actually did that study. We
Right.
found it absolutely defunct in terms of sampling, right? So there's
Mhm.
no way that they could capture that data, right?
That's
And
right.
get that accuracy. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's the real big shortcoming, right? It's like, when do we have a device that's going to be able to sample that in such a way that we get really accurate, objective data that defines a PSG, right? Because that's what we
Correct.
call our gold standard, right? So just want to reiterate that. Yeah.
Yep. Well said.
Dr. Singh, what's going to be the impact in the next 12 months for dental sleep of Inspire?
Yeah, great question. So Inspire is a treatment that can be very beneficial, for our patients. I think the impact, let's just put it this way in terms of criteria, right? So like when it comes to criteria for getting Inspire, you have to have moderate to severe sleep apnea. You've had to fail CPAP, and there are sort of BMI ranges where you qualify and you don't qualify. Okay.
Mhm.
So the impact of dental sleep medicine will be that you're going to have these patients that come to your office that are going to say, like, listen, like, I hate CPAP, I failed it. Okay. And like, I really heard this ad on the radio and on TV, and I want to get inspired. Okay.
Mhm.
And that's where you've got to be in tune in terms of the criteria, but also ask your patient, listen, we have an option. And patients really don't understand what Inspire is, right? When I actually tell my patients, you understand that you're getting a pacemaker like device implanted, right? Then they're like, oh, are you kidding me? I didn't know it was that. I thought it was like you have a remote control, you press this.
Yeah.
I breathe better at night. Like, no, it's a little bit more than that. So
Yeah.
you've got to go one step further, just have them understand that this is what's taking place. It's a surgical procedure. There are really strict criteria to getting that authorized.
Mhm.
And so for dental sleep medicine, I believe it's an opportunity to like get on those patients and say, listen, we already have a therapy that's proven to work, right? And we can actually utilize that now that's less invasive. All right. So why don't we do that first before we think about doing Inspire? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where
This idea that it's CPAP or we're going to insert this, we're going to
right,
surgically implant this pacemaker,
right.
and there's nothing in between. Right?
100%.
That's
Exactly.
that's ridiculous, right? So what
Exactly.
about? I mean, if I'm a dentist, well, Inspire has, of course, spent. Len, you probably have a better view on this about how much they've actually spent on marketing, but they've spent zillions of dollars. I'm pretty sure is the actual number. Len, how much have they spent? Do you know?
They're spending 200 million this year. They spent
Okay.
about 100 to 150 million last year on marketing
Yeah.
and sales.
So they're spending a couple $100 million on marketing,
Right.
which is driving awareness. So if you're a dentist and your patients are hearing, these Inspire commercials, which they are, and they're seeing these television commercials, this is a prime opportunity for you to reach out to these surgeons, because so many of these patients are, because of comorbidities, et cetera, they are precluded from getting Inspire surgery. So this is an opportunity to help create some more awareness about oral appliance therapy as a viable option for many patients. So rather than viewing this as a threat, I would view this as an immense opportunity to network with your physician colleagues and treat a lot of those patients potentially.
Particularly
Where am I wrong?
particularly for United Healthcare.
Yes, great point.
Healthcare opened up, updated their sleep apnea policy effective March 1st, that in order for United Healthcare to reimburse for Inspire, amongst other things, the patient has to fail an adequate trial of CPAP, and they must fail an adequate trial of oral appliances. So that United Healthcare channel, for any of the folks listening in who have a lot of patients coming in through United Healthcare, making sure that, the docs in your area know that they can use you for oral appliance therapy for those United Healthcare patients is important. And the other thing to know is that Inspire is trying to teach the ENT surgeons to work around the UHC policy by saying, yeah, we'll just go on Amazon and buy you a $50 whatever on Amazon, and that qualifies as an adequate trial of oral devices. So make sure that you're out there advocating for your dental sleep practice and making United Healthcare and the local physicians aware that you can provide them with custom oral appliance therapy,
Sure.
not non-custom oral appliance therapy, because
I,
custom
yeah,
oral appliance therapy connotes an adequate trial of oral appliance therapy. Non-custom oral appliance therapy does not qualify as an adequate trial. So that's a big opportunity, UHC.
and I saw Randy nodding affirmatively. What tips or techniques, words of wisdom do you have there, Randy?
Yeah, I agree 100% with Lynn there. It's and I heard that too, as far as United Healthcare and I think that other carriers may do the same thing. I think United Healthcare unfortunately, it is United Healthcare, and no one really likes United Healthcare's reimbursement rates, but hopefully Cigna, hopefully Aetna and the Blues also adopt the same policy where they do require oral appliance therapy before, your insurance is going to spend $40,000, $50,000 on that therapy. So, and then kind of back to your point, I think it's going to help our industry. One, what Lynn just said. Two, the cost of Inspire as a CPAP alternative, the cost of Inspire to the insurance carrier versus the cost of an oral appliance to the insurance carrier is dramatic, right? So I think it's going to help us in a way that even the insurance carriers are recognizing the importance of oral appliance therapy, in addition to CPAP therapy or CPAP noncompliance. And you can't say for sure, but you've noted, I've been on these webinars and talked a lot about the networks opening up, the VA opening up, everybody kind of embracing dental practices now that, you've been in this industry for any amount of time, at least 5 years, you would know the insurance carriers weren't interested in helping dental practice or dental dentists get into, dental sleep medicine networks. That's changing. And, perhaps some of that is because of the cost of Inspire.
What about Philips' exit from, not entirely, but Philips' exit from the space? What impact does this have on dental sleep medicine? What, if anything, should dentists be looking out for on this front at the AADSM? And how can they leverage these unfortunate events to the benefit of their business and for their patients' well-being? Len?
Well, let me just, if you don't mind, Jace, just a quick comment on the Inspire point, a closing comment. And hopefully it's near and dear to your heart. Everybody on this webinar, I would encourage you to reach out to your academies. It could be ASBA, it could be AADSM, it could be whatever, and encourage them to be your advocates. Encourage them to write letters to the Cignas, the Blue Cross, Blue Shields, the Aetnas, and say, hey, here's United Healthcare's new sleep apnea policy that establishes oral devices as a prerequisite for Inspire. We suggest you do the same based on these studies or based on these reports or based on this data. Get those academies to represent you and advocate for your practices with those payers to improve access to care. Now all the academies are going to not allow me to show up. but that's
a great point. You're encouraging dentists to reach out to these organizations and ask them to advocate on their behalf, which frankly, that should be the sole role they exist.
Yeah, they pay a member, right? Everyone pays a membership fee, to be members. Ask for something for it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's sensible.
Amen.
Amen. What about Philips? So Philips is gone. They've been a big player in CPAP, the gold standard. We've already talked about that. What does this mean for a dentist? What does this mean for dental sleep medicine?
Well, for us, it's what launched the FLOZAT head-to-head study, is that the University of Antwerp Hospital was a Philips hospital. They can no longer get supply. They had hundreds of patients who were out of therapy with no real way to get a CPAP. And so Dr. Van der Veeken approached the ethics committee and asked if he could treat them with oral appliances first, and promised to cross them over into CPAP once supply became available. So the Philips exit has helped us, in conjunction with the University of Antwerp, get a study approved and get a study implemented that would never have been possible without Philips, with the recall and them ultimately exiting the field. So I think it creates a lot of opportunities, maybe not quite like the FLOZAT study, but ResMed has not always been able to make up the supply shortages. So again, I think it's training physicians to realize that they can't just be dependent on a CPAP mask for every patient that walks into their clinic. Even if they want to give them a CPAP, they might not be able to. And there's a lot of conversations, Dr. Singh and Randy, you guys might know more about this than I do, but conversations about triage and stratification of save your CPAP mask for the high BMI, real severe OSA patients, and then see what other types of therapies you can use for the less complicated cases, like using oral appliances for mild or low BMI patients, or patients who present without comorbidities or those types of things. So I think it's being inculcated, and it helps inculcate in the mind of the physicians that they need more than just a CPAP, because what happens if ResMed goes away? Not saying that it's going to, but no one thought Philips would go away either. So what happens if they need to have some contingency planning and some business continuity planning? And that's certainly helped raise the prominence of oral devices.
Yeah. Dr. Singh, what other insights do you have there?
Yeah, no, totally. So, one of the things I would definitely reiterate is that, listen, with Philips going away, ResMed tried to take that place, but there's no way they've been able to, right? So, now we have other companies from China that are trying to get approval for CPAPs in this country. Okay. So what happened was they actually passed a law where, even though it was an FDA approved device, they allowed those companies to bring in their devices during COVID, especially, during the supply shortage of Philips, and be able to utilize those devices. But now they're actually trying to get FDA approval, right? So, but what I found in my practice, at least, was that folks, when they had lost their CPAP and they were struggling, a lot of these folks were only using it for a few hours a night. Okay, they weren't even compliant with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
right.
One of the things you got to really ask as a dental provider is like, hey, how much were you using that device? Right. You'll be surprised how many people were using it 50% of the time, 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night. And that's really where the conversation comes into, like, hey, listen, we have a therapy that's available, that works, right? So have you thought about that? Because they're going back to their sleep doctor, their primary care physician, who doesn't talk about oral appliance therapy, right?
Yeah.
So these people are going to present to you, and that's really the opportunity to take upon yourself in terms of, like, we really got a viable therapy here outside of CPAP. Let's give it a try, right? You were like,
let me expound on that for a moment, if I could, because that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I want to share this, and you guys tell me where I'm wrong. What I'm hearing here is that they're really, between Inspire and Philips, there is a huge opportunity. It's between Philips, Inspire, and the continual improvement of precision medical devices, of oral appliances. There is an immense opportunity. So, perfect alignment for dentists. But the onus is on the dentist to then seize this opportunity, take action, and make the most of this. So, for example, going out and meeting with these ENT surgeons that are doing Inspire, going out and meeting with local sleep physicians or PCPs, because frequently it's not that they're just naysaying oral appliance therapy because they're bad people. It's typically because they're uninformed or potentially misinformed. So everyone that's on this session tonight, you are well positioned, wonderfully positioned to really have a booming dental sleep medicine practice. But it's not going to just happen by accident. You're going to have to take action to leverage all this opportunity. Is that
Yep.
is anything what's wrong with what I just said?
No, we can
Nothing.
quantify it, right? 4.1 million people were affected by the Philips recall. And every year, the last couple of years, about 900,000 people have responded to the Inspire advertising. And of the 900,000 who have responded, 90% ultimately reject the therapy. So that's 900,000 people who say, I'm sick, I want to get better, I don't want to wear a CPAP anymore, but I'm not ready for an invasive surgery. So there's 890,000 people out there who've responded to an Inspire ad that don't want CPAP, do not want to go forward with invasive surgery, but they do want to get better. And 890,000 people is multiple times bigger than the number of patients that are collectively treated with oral appliances every year. So it's
In the United States.
in the United States. So how do we
Entirely,
capture
yeah.
that leakage, right? We have to capture that leakage through action and mobilization and
Sure.
engaging physicians and educating them and demonstrating that we can take good care of their patients.
Just
All
to
right.
add to that real quickly, like we probably in our clinical practice referred 40 patients for Inspire, probably say over the last 4 years, right? Largely because they want to try it out and do it, and they meet the criteria. Only 4 have been approved.
Yeah.
Okay. Only 4 have been approved. And again, it's nothing against Inspire. The point is like we're still like what you mentioned, right? Like that's 90%. Okay.
Right.
That we're missing. All right. So like
Sure.
of course we're gonna refer them for oral appliance, but that's like this is one practice. Like let's think beyond that, what's out there, and that's where you gotta focus exactly.
Massive
I
What
agree with
opportunity.
about go ahead, Randy.
I agree with you, Jason. Now is the best time. I was just lecturing this weekend. This is the best time ever to be in dental sleep medicine. And we've talked about that, but you talk about leveraging against Inspire, talk about the cost of Inspire. Like if you're talking 40 to 50,000 and patients have an average, if they met their deductible, they have an average of 20% cost share. They're paying 8,000 out of pocket to 10,000 out of pocket, right? That's you get if you see an in-network dentist, you're probably only gonna have to pay $500-600 out of pocket for your oral appliance, if that. And then you compare CPAP costs, and this is something I was trying to teach the dental practices. I love what Lynn talked about in the marketing aspect to use as a marketing when you're reaching out to those physicians as far as saving those PAPs for the severes and maybe some severe to moderate, right? And just kind of coming in with that position that, hey, let me help you with some of these, these patients, maybe the mild patients, but also think about, and I did this with Lisa about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, an exercise of what's the cost in 5 years with CPAP therapy, versus what's the cost of oral appliance therapy in 3 or 5 years, depending on what the RUL is for the insurance carrier to approve a new one, right? Your deductible resets every year with CPAP therapy. You're buying supplies every 3 months with CPAP therapy. The cost factor, oral appliance therapy, if you're seeing an in-network provider, oral appliance therapy is going to beat Inspire out-of-pocket cost to a patient hands down, and actually beat CPAP therapy over time. So we're talking about clinically, obviously a lot of patients would rather use oral appliance than Inspire or PAP, but also the cost effectiveness of it as well if you're seeing an in-network provider.
Undoubtedly. Len, or actually Dr. Singh, AHI.
Yeah.
That's all. AHI.
No, yeah. That's all I need to say, right? AHI. Yeah. And I just talked about this. Interestingly, I was on a webinar right before yours. So like this is really something where I think Len mentioned it too, right? Like beyond the AHI, right? Clinical parameters to really define what's going on with you when it comes to the burden of sleep apnea, right? So we've got to go beyond that, right? We've been stuck in this mild, moderate, severe range, and really honestly, if you look at the data, it's just it's almost something that was created by CMS, right? Just for the purposes of defining severity and getting patients and sort of defining treatment parameters and costs, right? So it's really not something that pans out necessarily in your burden clinically. So I think we're going to get there in the next few years in terms of like hypoxic burden, right? Going beyond looking at even things like sleep fragmentation. How many times are you waking up, right? We have people that have elevated RDIs, but normal AHIs, right? But it's still affecting their sleep because they're not necessarily having DSATs, but they're waking up a lot, so they're not feeling quality sleep. But we know the long-term risk factors are the same. So I think it's one of those things where over the next few years, we're definitely going to see a change in our industry when it comes to defining what is clinically what's the degree of clinical impairment that you have, right? And looking at those factors and adding those in terms of just your AHI, because that's not going to cut it in the long run.
Sure. Yeah, Len, I know that you've talked. I've seen you and you've hosted with ProSomnus events where there's been a lot of discussion around this topic. AHI is obviously a very flawed metric. What do you see the next 3 years hold for AHI and a new clinical parameter?
Well, I think kind of linking it back to something Dr. Singh said, I think this, the medical team at ProSomnus, there's credit for this. This idea of AHI can still continue to be a screening tool that a patient might be at risk, but then the way you diagnose the sleep apnea might need to dig deeper into some of these other metrics that are more predictive of health outcomes. And we're seeing a lot of papers recently. Dr. Sestouli has published a couple showing that oral appliances are non-inferior to CPAP with mean arterial blood pressure. And then there are some randomized controlled trial meta-analyses in the AADSM guidelines showing that oral appliances are non-inferior to CPAP, and the analysis slightly favors oral appliances in terms of reducing systolic and diastolic blood pressure. And then Dr. Van der Vieken out of Belgium just published a study about IVS remodeling, and that successful responders to oral appliance therapy show a high degree of IVS remodeling versus non-responders or those that are not treated. And then Dr. Sestouli published another paper about cardiovascular autonomic normalization, and that responders to successful oral appliance therapy do better in that area as well. So it's really nice to see our field getting beyond, hey, we lowered the AHI.
Sure.
And then John Remmers and Aaron Mosca will have a poster at AADSM this year that they kind of a revision of work they published at ATS last year, showing that 91 to 94% of all patients their sleep apnea specific hypoxic burden is reduced to what are considered safer levels or improved to safer levels with oral appliance therapy. So that was the first thing that worried me when the AHRQ paper came out saying the AHI does not predict health outcomes.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what does? And will my company's product help?
Yeah.
Fortunately, as it turns out, oral devices, so far, certain oral devices have demonstrated to be highly efficacious at improving sleep apnea specific hypoxic burden of all severity levels.
What about Dr. Singh, pharmacological solutions for OSA? What about GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic addressing obesity? What does all of this mean for the field of sleep medicine and specifically for oral appliance therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're actually participating in a trial right now, an Aptamed trial. Okay, so there's a trial looking at a specific pharmacological agent in terms of treating those patients that have sleep apnea that have failed CPAP or other treatments, right? So nothing has been approved as of yet. Okay, in terms of what we actually have seen in the data, it doesn't seem to pan out. But what I will say there is that I think the previous analysis of the data has been a little bit flawed because you don't there's other factors that have not been taken into account with the patients taking maybe obesity reducing medications, variables in like BMI, that sort of thing. So it's still out there in terms of being actually efficacious of treating sleep apnea. So I don't think at this point it's something to worry about in terms of, and again, if something comes out that helps, again, in this sort of space, we still know the numbers are so tremendous that there's still plenty of patients out there that are going to benefit from all sorts of therapies or even combination therapies, right? So at this point, we're still in the investigation part of it in terms of figuring out if pharmacological treatments can go somewhere. In terms of GLP-1 agonists, I mean, I'll say that I've definitely seen patients on them that have had some significant reduction in weight, and that's something that you've always got to talk to your patients about, right? Because the bottom line is, yeah, it's a major factor in terms of adding to your risk for having sleep apnea. Now, that being said, right, I will still tell dentists all the time that 50% of my patients are actually regular weight or mildly overweight, right? That's half the population, okay, that I'm seeing. So don't get skewed into this whole myth out there that I believe is that you have to have the Pickwickian syndrome to have sleep apnea, right? You're the middle-aged, obese, diabetic male that's hypertensive. Forget about that. Like I have patients that walk in my office that are thin white females, right? That have severe sleep apnea because of their airway structure, right?
Yeah.
And then if you add for example the ethnicities, the Asian ethnicities on top of that in terms of the jaw structure, it actually these are thin people. Okay. I'll give myself an example. I was missed of having sleep apnea for years of my life until I went and did a sleep medicine fellowship. Okay. And at that point I was a freaking athlete, right? I was strong, I was playing ball, I was working out, but I was tired. And I was told, you're tired because you're a doctor, right? All doctors are tired. Well, I had moderate sleep apnea, right? And until I got that treated, like I didn't realize, night and day, man, it was difference, right? So I think these pharmacological treatments are out there, but still there's still plenty of patients.
Top-line findings from their Surmount OSA trial a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And what it showed was about a 50% improvement in AHI score, meaning the residual AHI, the mean residual AHI for the population in the study was still 27 AHI, meaning they all still had moderate OSA. So it didn't treat the OSA, it moderated it. It took those high AHI, high BMI patients and made them moderate OSA patients. It may be true, although the GLPs tend, at least the data showing the GLPs tend to not work as well on kind of the low AHI, low BMI patients. They work better on the high BMI patients. But it may be true that some patients who take GLP-1 might drop outside of our treatment window and go from an AHI of 11 down to an AHI of 5 or 6. But it's more likely that there's a net favorable shift of people into the treatment window for dental sleep medicine, because those high BMI, high OSA patients are likely going to get a CPAP or go for bariatric surgery or other types of therapies. Well, now if they're moderated, they can move into a treatment window that's favorable for dental sleep medicine. And this was people who were on GLP-1 for 1 year. So they need to be in treatment for that 1 year, right? At what point during the year do they moderate their AHI? You can't pick a day. So they need to be treated while they're going through their GLP treatment flight. So I think it's a massive opportunity for our field because it's yet another argument for less invasive, as Randy said, more cost-effective therapy, and more patient-friendly therapy. But we got to make it happen. It's not just going to happen on its own. We got to help put one and one together for our referring physicians and let them know that we are an option. So while people are going through their GLP-1 flight, that they should be in an oral device during that treatment cycle. and that when they're moderated at the end of their GLP flight, that oral devices could be a great option for them.
Yeah. So I'm going to the AADSM. You're all going to be there in New Orleans next week. I'm leaving early, leaving on Sunday. But Transform Dental Sleep will have a booth 308. We don't have anything to sell you. We're just going to be watching movies, probably The Goonies, maybe the Vacation movie, possibly Fletch, talking about sleep. And we hope you'll stop by and see us. And then, of course, be sure you stop by and see our friends at Len and the friends at Prosomnus. Len, you don't know your booth number, I'm sure, but the floor is not huge. And then you all are also hosting a meeting coming up. ProSleep is what are the dates and the details there, Len?
I think the details are go to the website.
Yeah.
This is revealing how dependent I am on Heather and the marketing group.
Yes.
To make it look good. But there it is, right there. She put a slide together, so it's
August 1st through 3rd in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's a lovely time of the year. It's a great venue, and I think Jason, you say that Transform is the best dental sleep medicine conference, and I would agree. Fantastic conference. I would say this is the best sleep medicine conference of the year, because we're taking a little bit of a bigger scope. We've got a great roster of speakers from sleep medicine and dental sleep medicine alike, presenting leading edge technology and leading edge science that's shaping our field. So invite all of you to attend, and we'll have more information at the booth at the AADSM. The other thing I want to call your attention to is we have what's called this industry product theater at the AADSM. It's a new thing this year. And we will be talking about some of our new technology at that industry product theater. So come on in, register for it, sign up. I think space is limited and getting pretty full, but please sign up and join us.
Yeah, and speaking of ProSleep, I mean, Prosomnus isn't sponsoring this webinar or anything. I'm not beholden to you for any reason, but truly, I was at the meeting last year. It was a spectacular meeting. The stage, the roster, the panel discussions were stacked with just incredible presenters on some really, the depth of knowledge and the research reviews were, I learned a ton and walked away really with a recharged passion for dental sleep medicine. So great meeting. Encourage everyone to register and check out that product theater. And then Randy,
real quick, Jason,
yeah,
put the link
yeah.
to ProSleep in the chat box so they can check it out if they don't want to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy. And I put a little Easter egg right there over my shoulder, Jason. I was waiting for you to see it.
I can't see that far.
It's your book up on the wall.
Oh,
so
thanks.
Returning the favor, my friend.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then Randy, you're going to be, you and Christine will be at the AADSM in New Orleans as well. And you've got a special offer. This is a unique one. Revenue auditing service. You want to give a quick update on what that is and how attendees can take advantage of that?
Yeah, it's a new service we're offering. We take a lot of other billing services refugees. And one of the things that we notice as soon as we take these new clients in, also some sleep physicians that we've been working with, they're using third-party services, which most of them do. We identify right away that they're losing revenue, whether it's patient collections, whether it's reimbursement from the insurance. So one of the auditing services, one, to ensure that the practice is maximizing the revenue, whether it's collections from the patients, collections from the carriers. The other part of the service is checking compliance. Are they compliant with Medicare rules and their policies? Medicare doesn't require pre-authorizations. A lot of practices may miss a step here and there, and they could be subject to some recoupment payments from the carriers. And same with any policies, or any private carriers out there meeting those policies, So sometimes You'll catch that during the pre-authorization. The billing service or the practice will catch it during pre-authorization process, but not all carriers require pre-authorization. And if they're not requiring pre-auth and you're submitting these claims and they're paying you for these claims, you want to make sure that they can't come back and ask for any of those payments back because of loose paperwork and loose documentation. So we're offering this service now to help. You know, I was taught by a great mentor in my life to always inspect what you expect. So it's a service that we can inspect what's going on, you know, behind the scenes for the dentists are busy. They don't have time to look at this in detail. We have time and we have the expertise to identify some either give them the peace of mind that they're doing well, or let them know there's some things that they need to improve upon.
And Randy, I think Elias put in the chat your link, but can you just tell everybody real quick how to get in touch with you if they want to take advantage of that opportunity, that offer?
Yeah, you can go to pristinemedicalbilling.com, click there, and you can scroll down. It's now a menu item. The service is a menu item. And also you can email us at info@pristinemedicalbilling.com or email me personally at randyc@pristinemedicalbilling.com. But the auditing service is in the drop-down menu now that you can just go straight to our website and purchase it.
Awesome, makes it easy. And Dr. Singh, what about iSleep? Can you just talk real quickly about what it is that iSleep offers and how dentists can contact you to find out more about your services?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So let me just say one real quick thing. Shout out to like Len and ProSomnus. I went to their conference last year. It was awesome. And I actually checked out their lab. And it was the first time for me to actually get an idea, like in terms of what's happening, the technology side of creating the oral appliance, right? And it was mind blowing. So like
Yeah.
if anyone wants to, I mean, I would highly I would highly recommend that you do that if you have an opportunity. In terms of Randy and Pristine, let me say shout out because we've been working with Randy for years now. And like their service is second to none. What he does and what he keeps an eye on, I can't do. No one of my staff can do it. He does that, right? His team does that. So, you know, shout out to him. Awesome service in terms of billing and being able to help you with that. And that. So for our team, you know, we're licensed across the United States and DC, right? So if you have any needs in terms of telemedicine and interpreting any of your sleep testing, we're there for you. So we can do that. You know, we have a quick turnaround. Our goal is to become more and more efficient, become the sort of leader to be able to like see your patients. You know, if pairs require a pre-consult visit, post-consult visit, we can take care of that. If they require interpretations by a board certified sleep physician, we can take care of that. And that's where we'll also be at you know in New Orleans. Fatima, my CEO, will be there, so reach out to her anytime if we can help you out.
Absolutely. And then I want to invite everyone, Dr. Singh, Randy, you spoke there last year, but I want to invite everyone to register for the Transform Dental Sleep Symposium in Scottsdale on January 31st and February 1st, 2025. I know you're thinking that's a lifetime away, but it sold out last year. It will sell out again this year. We didn't even decide to do the meeting until June of 2023. And by November, it was sold out. So get registered at tdssymposium.com. You can see there's a few of our speakers. We've assembled a roster of speakers that's really energetic speakers on very practical topics. So we'll take a lot of this, sort of these dots, and they'll help you connect them so you can really take action in your practice and grow. So get registered. We're doing something unique this year. We encourage everyone to not only get registered for the symposium, but book your rooms now and come a day early, because on January 30th, we're going to have 3 workshops. Each of these require a separate registration, and each of these will be focused on a different topic. There's one on medical billing that's sponsored by Pristine. These are from noon to 6, so deep dives on specific topics. But one sponsored by Pristine on medical billing, another sponsored by ASAP Pathway on pediatric sleep disorder breathing. And then finally, one on marketing a dental sleep practice, and that's sponsored by Sleep Apnea Leads. So each of these will be deep dives on a specific topic: dental sleep medicine marketing, medical billing, and pediatric sleep disorder breathing. So get registered for those. Each of those are limited to just 35 attendees. Again, it will sell out. We can't get a bigger room for it. So get registered now.
Real quick before we go into lightning round,
Go.
Dr. Singh, the website for iSleep.
I just put that in the chat. Yeah, it's isleepmd.com.
Okay.
Just click on contact, and then it'll go to our admin, and we can get back to you.
Excellent. So what is one thing everyone listening can do that would immediately improve their dental sleep medicine journey, Randy? One thing everybody can do. What is that?
Make it affordable.
Make treatment affordable to patients.
Get in network, make it affordable, help more people.
Excellent. Dr. Singh, why aren't more physicians like you, and how can dentists engage more physicians to treat more patients with oral appliance therapy when appropriate?
They're just not educated enough, honestly. I think if you go out there and you meet your physicians in the community, honestly, they'll actually be very open to that, right? And not enough dentists do that. So I think once you get out there and you know, and especially when it comes to mild to moderate, if you say that buzzword, because a lot of patients don't comply with CPAP, they're going to come to you. Just watch, they will.
Love it. Randy, what is a movie or song that everyone loves that drives you nuts?
Movie or song that everybody loves. Nothing really drives me nuts from that. Maybe
Come
girls
on.
just want to dance or something, or girls just want to have fun. That one's kind of, I don't know.
Okay. What about you? What about you, Len?
Avatar. I don't get the attraction to the blue people.
Dr. Singh, you got anything there? A movie or song that just drives you insane that everybody else loves?
Yeah, I'm kind of not a Cyndi Lauper fan myself. So
We've got two Cyndi Laupers in a Blue Man Group.
Yeah.
Or maybe Len was talking about the Smurfs.
The Avatar movie that everyone went nuts about a couple years ago. I just couldn't get into that.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Got
get
it.
Did not get it.
All right. Complete this sentence, Len. The future of dental sleep medicine is blank.
Dependent upon people getting active. It is dependent upon everyone getting active and engaging their sleep physicians, engaging their payers, engaging their academies, and getting them to advocate. If everyone just sits back and is passive about it, then I think that the future will not be as bright. It will not realize its potential. But the potential is massive, but it's dependent upon us getting active and realizing that potential.
I love it. Randy, fill in that blank.
Very promising. I think it's easier to get into dental sleep medicine and succeed in dental sleep medicine with all the technology we spoke about, telehealth, home sleep testing, the appliance. You talked about the precision of the appliances now, and now what's coming out as far as the remote patient monitoring ability. I think it's extremely promising.
Love it. And Dr. Singh, would you fill in that blank too?
I believe it's very promising. I think that the data is only going to improve in terms of what the studies pan out in terms of using oral appliance therapy. So I think from that angle, and even in terms of like the gaps that we talked about with Inspire, with the Philips recall, I think it's extremely promising. It's just, again, like I would agree with Len, you got to go out there and market a little bit, and you'll find that you'll really be successful in the long run.
Yeah. Len, what's the best restaurant in New Orleans?
I wish I had Joel Blix to tell me.
Saba.
Yeah. Randy, you have a suggestion?
Something in the French Quarter, I would guess. I'm getting there early too, so I'll let you know by Monday.
Well, I want to recommend to everyone, go to Saba. It's on Magazine Street. It's my favorite restaurant in the United States. So go check out Saba if you like Mediterranean food.
That's
and
Old Nola Cookery. It's a dive I went to many years ago in the French Quarter. If it's still there, try it.
Try it out, huh? All right. Well, guys, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Oh, someone just recommended Clancy's. And someone just said, yeah, Avatar is pretty weak.
Yeah,
But
saw that too.
I want to say thank you guys for jumping on here and being so open. I've learned a lot from each of you over the years, and I appreciate you being so forthcoming with information today. I appreciate all that you do for the dentists that you work with, so that they can to help make them better practitioners, so they can help more people and improve our community. So thank you, Dr. Singh, Len, Randy, Elias, and thank you to all of you that have hung out with us tonight. Again, your CE certificate will be emailed to you in the next 48 hours. I hope to see many of you in New Orleans, and just heed the advice from everybody tonight, and keep learning and keep acting, keep taking action, keep making things happen. And that snowball effect will occur where it'll just keep growing and building and growing and building. And you will create the career that you want to live in, the community you want to live in. So thank you all. See you in New Orleans. And yeah, I wrote a book. Take care, y'all.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jason. Thank
See
you.
you in New
Thank you,
Orleans.
everybody. Have a great
Have a
evening.
good one.
See you in New Orleans.